Welcome to Puro Politics, the political podcast of the San Antonio Express News. My name is Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist, and I'm joined by
Carrie Clack, columnist, editorial board.
Metro editor Greg Jefferson.
Nancy Prayer-Johnson, deputy editor of the editorial board.
A lot of political news in the past week, and much of it revolves around the Castro family in San Antonio. And I wanted to start with Carrie, with a story that you broke last week, which was, I think, a huge surprise to so many people, which was that Joaquin Castro on Monday underwent cancer surgery. Can you talk a little bit about what he's dealing with on the health front and how he found out about it?
And I hesitate to use the word broke because it implies I actually was digging in and doing something. I wasn't. I mean, Joaquin had called me January 21st and to tell me that he had it. And he was just wanting to make sure that however it got out, that it was done in a way that no one else, that they kept it as close to the vest as he could. And so that's how it was. And about the last couple of weeks, I started working on it and going back and forth with him and Geneva, his press secretary. And I think up until Monday morning, the only folks here at the paper that knew that it was coming was Josh Badesky, Mark Medici, the editor, Josh Badesky, our editorial page editor, Mark Medici, our publisher, and myself. And Nancy knew a little bit about it. And because they were really just wanting to make sure the surgery had gone well. The worst thing that could have happened was, of course, Monday morning was if the doctors go in and see that it's spread and then there's no operation. But yeah, he found out about it in last July. He was in Spain and he and three others were in a car going back to the hotel. And it's very South Texas, like they hit a wild boar. And, Joaquin wasn't seriously injured, but they took him to the hospital just to run tests, and they did an MRI, and that's when the doctor told him that he needed to get something checked on when he gets back to San Antonio, and that's when they found it. So,
did he have any symptoms at all? I mean, he's kind of
nothing. I mean, the thing about this kind of neuroendocrine tumors is that they usually are asymptomatic. They usually pop up in the lungs, the small intestine, or the pancreas. His was in the small intestine. Mm-hmm. And he could have had it for years. He was talking about 6 years ago, feeling something and thinking maybe he could have had it back then, but you don't really know until you get it. Most folks who are diagnosed are in their 60s, so that he is 48, that's a good sign.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about it is, and I know he was getting these monthly shots to kind of slow the growth of the tumors, but he had a re-election campaign, which was, there was no doubt that he was going to get reelected. But I mean, he went through all that for a period of months, knowing that surgery was coming and that he was dealing with this, and that's not an easy thing.
And that's then when he called me in January, that's the thing. After I got off the phone with him, just started thinking about all that he's been going through. I mean, he came in January in last September for the editorial board meeting for candidates, and he's been active and hasn't missed any work. And he's not going to miss any work this time, I think.
How long do you think he'll be out?
He was looking at going back to work around March 22nd, but that particular week is like a 3-day week, and they're going to be out until April. So he plans on being back to work in April. So essentially, he's going to be missing three days. Well, the times that he would hope to have gotten the surgery before last week when there was a congressional recess, but you have to go by the surgeon's schedule, and so he'll miss probably about 3 or 4 weeks total when you count it all in, and not much at all. And I talked to him last night. He'll be in Houston he'll be released from the hospital probably tomorrow, and will be in Houston for the rest of the week and probably back home for the weekend. But he was feeling fine.
He's tweeting a lot. I noticed that.
Yeah.
He's never. This is a guy that's never been in a hospital since he was brought home as a baby.
Wow.
Probably bored sensible.
Yes.
I think it's important. I mean, it raises the issue of raising awareness of just going to the doctor. You should, everybody should go
absolutely.
once a year to get that, physical and lab work done. And because you never know. And so to me, that really brought that to the forefront, I think, is just, it's a really big reminder, even if you don't have symptoms, go
Absolutely.
get a checkup. And then, of course, our healthcare, the status of healthcare in our country and our state, which I love that he brought that up. And it says so much about him that we already know, that he cares about people. But I thought that was super important that he did bring that up. And not everybody can afford to go get that checkup. And that's a terrible testament to what's happening in our state.
That injection that he gets, if you didn't have health insurance, that monthly injection would cost $16,000.
Oh my God.
Right.
And that's the things he keeps stressing on, the fact that he has great health insurance and just, he has it's something he's talked about before when he was in the state legislature, but I think it's an issue that's going to be a little bit more higher up on his agenda when he comes back to work. Yeah.
And you're right, Nancy. I mean, it was really a fluke that he found out. And he would have been carrying this for another few years, really.
Yeah.
Was it could he have had the surgery earlier, or was it his decision to do it when
that was actually one of the last questions I hadn't thought of before the story, well, about a day or two before the story ran, and could he have had it any sooner? But this was all the surgeons doing.
Okay. So it wasn't him saying, well, hey, we got a really important election cycle, because he was helping out on other campaigns and other races.
Exactly.
And it could have, if, like Gilbert said, there was hardly a question about whether he would be reelected, but he was helping other Democrats. So
I think if he absolutely had to have surgery, he would have had it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting. Well, 3 days after he had surgery, his mother, Rosie Castro, who's a legendary activist in San Antonio. Her history is we could spend several podcasts talking about all the things she's done in her history and what a seminal figure she has been. She was chosen unanimously by the city council to receive the interim appointment in District 7 to fill the seat that Ana Sandoval vacated recently. And the process was really interesting because, for one thing, in the past, when we've had these vacancies that have to be filled by council, you'll have like 20 people or something. I think even the Clayton Perry interim appointment to fill that vacancy, when he was really just going to take a very short sabbatical, I think there were like 17 people or something like that. It's always a big number. In this case, you only had 4. So I think a lot of people were just saying, "This is Rosie's right.
This is hers.
We're just going to stay at it." And also the council had said, we really want to pick somebody who's not going to run in May. So that also probably kept some people out. But then they always whittle it down to 3 finalists. They talk to them, they bring them in the following day, and then they all sort of do another presentation. In this case, they said, we've picked 1 finalist.
Like, what's the point? What's the point?
Let's not waste time.
Politicians often carry out a charade. In this case,
honestly, like, wouldn't it have felt a little silly to everybody? It would have been, it's like, you kind of knew, like, as soon as her name came up, which was almost as soon as Ana Sandoval said she was leaving office. It's like, this is almost certainly going to be, her. And I think the reason, there are probably a couple of reasons you only saw 3 other, candidates or applicants. One is, could be that they've looked at her history in the district and across the city and said, okay, well, this is, go ahead. Also, there's the Castro name. That's the second one. I mean, the idea being that it's like, look, I mean, she's the mother of a former mayor and a sitting congressman, and she's going to get the appointment. And let's not go through all the, rigmarole with the application process.
Yeah, I mean, it's out of respect to the other ones too. I mean, who wants to go and do that? It's almost makes you think about doing like a job interview. You know somebody else is going to get the job. Let's not waste their time.
And the thing is, like, I thought, well, if they whittle it down to 3, that means, like, who's going to be the unlucky one of the 4 that say, you just do it. And then make the other 2 come back the next day and have to pay for parking or whatever the deal
Exactly.
Wait, you mean they wouldn't get free parking? I mean, come on.
Okay, I'll look into this. I shouldn't shoot from the hip on this. But.
As soon as it was decided, I mean, I didn't watch that meeting. I was out of town, but she's incredibly popular. People are so excited, and you can't help but be happy for her. My whole timeline on Facebook, Twitter, everything, email. I had so many people forwarding. Did you know this is happening? And people were just celebrating it, and rightfully so. She deserves it.
Yeah, and Julian did a brief sort of a little speech on her behalf, and he talked about the history, which has been written about a lot in the last few weeks, which is that at the age of 23, she ran for city council when we still had at-large districts, wanting to make sure that the West Side was getting its infrastructure and representation, because that just was not happening at that point. And so she and three other candidates on a slate for the it was committee for Barrio Betterment ran. She finished second. I think all four finished second, and that campaign was later used by MALDEF when they filed suit challenging San Antonio's at-large election system, which eventually was overturned. And so, she played a role in that. She's done so much as far as education. She's worked for the city. She has helped so many candidates get elected. It's just the list is endless. So there was just a sense. I mean, the more I've thought about this, I've realized how much of her work has really been sort of to advance other people, whether it's other political candidates or with other causes. I think she's also unique in that there are some people who will say, well, my generation, we did all this, and the next generation, they don't have that. She's really generous with her praise and her time for young people. I think it comes out of her work in education that she seems to really delight in seeing younger people. I can already sense a bond developing between her and Terry Castillo. Mm-hmm. She was certainly a big champion of Ana Sandoval's early on. So she's not one of those people that's like, my generation, we did everything and you all don't understand. She's unique in that way. And for someone who's had a chance, who's advanced so many other people and help them sort of have success, and including her sons. This seemed like a rare moment for me where it's like, okay, now she gets to be the star.
I mean, you did a great job in your column yesterday of just reminding a lot of us exactly all the things that she has done in her life and her career. I mean, she's not just the twins' mother, and she's more than a symbolic figure. I mean, she's a legendary activist, and it just seems right. Thursday morning I was in Milan Park. I was working on a column on Jesse Trevino, so I spent the morning just in front of the Spirit of Healing, and then around lunchtime I started going to Mitiel and get something to eat. And I walk in and I hear this voice behind me, Gary Clack, and it's Rosie, and I completely forgotten what was going on that day. But I just thought, this is so West Side.
Yes.
Jesse Trevino, Mitiel, and Rosie Castro, and that party in the back, including Maria Berriozal. It's so San Antonio. There are people who hate her because of her politics, but for the most part, I think everyone's happy about this. It'd be different if she was running. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's not. Mm-hmm. This is just so right.
But I like, how you say she's not just the Castro's mom, but she is the Castro's mom. And I think that is, it speaks volumes. You can also look at the other side, like she is the Castro's mom, and she produced these, icons and these legends in San Antonio and beyond. And I think that speaks so much about who she is. In her very first message out to her constituents, it was like a little newsletter that was emailed. And she's just like, I'm humbled and honored and humbled to serve. And then her very last line was like, I welcome your energy and your energy and involvement, ! And I think that's super important too. It's like she wants everyone to, not just other political leaders or elected leaders, but everyone to play a part. And I think our city would be much better off if people got involved.
I don't think she'll do this, but I've long thought that the best memoir, it would be hers.
Oh, yeah.
Because for obvious reason, because she's in the middle of her mother's story, coming over here as a child, then her own rich history.
I think Greg and I talked when Julian wrote his book. I think we both agreed like the parts about Rosie were like to me the most fascinating.
I was pretty critical of the book. I actually wrote a pretty nasty review about it. But anyway, that was the best part. I mean, Julian's account of their kind of early childhood, and there was just a lot of new information about Rosie and her mothering, like details that were just
complex relationships she had with her own mom.
Exactly. It was just like that was a really rich part of that book. But wasn't a great book otherwise.
Yep. So. But and the thing is, when we talk about policy in San Antonio, and there are ways in which we don't even necessarily think about her, but she went as a college student to the Midwest, taught the children of migrant workers, and realized how important at that point how preschool was. She said this is really critical. If kids get behind early, it's going to be a problem. She taught preschool in the Edgewood district. And she had conversations with Julian about this, and he his work on pre-K first aid, his philosophy, which was just that you have to develop nurture learning in children at a very young age, and that's the key to everything, to being the kind of city that we want to be. A lot of that came from her example and also conversations that he had with her. And so there are ways in which she has affected this city that people don't even realize. And before we wrap things up, I wanted to talk about the decision on Saturday by the Executive Committee of the Texas Republican Party to censure Congressman Tony Gonzales, who represents San Antonio and also a lot of border territory between here and El Paso. This is basically about primarily, I think, about his vote for the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which made some modest steps on gun reform. I think some of us would probably think maybe more could have been done, but it had a lot of funding for mental health. It had expanded background checks for those under 21, some funding for states that had instituted red flag laws. There were some Republicans who voted for it, but he's gotten flack for that. You have to consider Uvalde is in his congressional district, and he was very mindful of the fact that people in the district in that city wanted something done. He also voted for the Respect for Marriage Act. He was the only Texas congressman who voted for that, which was an attempt to codify same-sex marriage and also interracial marriage in light of Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion in the Dobbs abortion case last year, where he said maybe we had to revisit some of these other cases, including same-sex marriage. So I guess, Greg, I'll start with you. When you look at this, we've seen some other situations like that. John Cornyn got censured by the Collin County Republican Party last year. Joe Strauss got some of this same treatment before he left. Yeah,
it's different in Tony Gonzales's case, though. Ever since George W. Bush tried to make inroads among Latino voters, the party has said we want to attract Hispanic voters and cultivate lawmakers from South Texas along the border. They've done that with Tony Gonzales, and now they're turning on him.
That's a great point.
It makes me question: are they really interested in attracting and keeping Latino voters?
Also, keep in mind, this is someone who served 20 years in the Navy. Right. As you said, a Latino Republican in Texas who's from South Texas. He is what the Republican Party is. You said this is what they would.
They used to be really strong on national security.
Yeah.
He should be. They should have friendly, loving ties with this guy. You would think they would do what they can to make sure he's reelected, but they're not. There are consequences to a censure vote for his reelection effort.
We all disagree with him on many issues, and on guns, we'd love to see for him to go further. But you have to acknowledge the political courage of those two votes, and he is what if the Republican Party is going to get past this period that they're in now, where they're basically Donald Trump's party. He's the future. He's the kind of Republican. He's a Latino. He's a vet. he's conservative. He's not right wing, but he's a conservative, and it is a slap in the face of Latinos. It's basically saying that we want y'all, but we want y'all to do as we say. Mm-hmm. We want you to be as we think you should be.
I think the key with him is we may disagree on policy issues, but I think that he is there. And I think we've all had some conversations with him to get the sense that I think he's there to actually make policy. He's not. There are a lot of people who are there to grandstand, who are going to be talking about CRT and wokeism and just basically in bathrooms and school library books and all this kind of stuff and drag shows. And I don't get the sense that he's definitely a hawk on the border. And I've heard him say the Biden's this is America last policies from the Biden administration. He will use some of that language that you see in the party now. But I think he's generally there with the idea of I want to get something done on immigration. I want to find some bipartisan solution. Again, the solution that he may want may not be something that maybe we may differ with him on some certain aspects of it. But I think he's there actually to try to make policy. And right now, the Republican Party is not really geared for that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, to me, he makes me nostalgic for conservatives. You could deal with. You can have an argument with, and you don't feel like vilifying him, and you don't feel vilified by him. There is, look, the America Last stuff. He does indulge in kind of the hard right grassroots rhetoric sometimes, but you just don't get the sense that that's who he is. Like he's not, he's not going to take a really tribal point of view where it's like, look, if you're not with me, to hell with you. And basically that was the crux of the vote with the executive committee on Saturday.
Although his tweet yesterday was it was to hell with you. No mamas. He's unapologetic, which I think says a lot. He really believes in what he's doing, and censor or not, he's going to hopefully, stand for what's right. I know somebody tweeted after he tweeted out yesterday, and there's quite a bit. There you go. There it is.
Yeah, it's like there it is.
Let the tweet say it for itself.
And exactly. And I think the hashtag growing up Mexican American.
Yeah,
I think that was a great. That was
telling.
Going straight to the heart of what happened.
Very telling.
Yeah, I actually missed that part of it, and that's a great point.
That's what jumped out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we should say too the practical effect of this, because he knows this too. Look, he got reelected in his district, which had been a pretty close swing district, and I think he was pretty popular anyway. And then with redistricting, it's safer in the Republican column now, and so he got reelected easily. I think that's going to continue. This move by the Republican Party basically means where they're going to discourage him from running again. Like he cares, and they may help a primary opponent. Again, he's probably going to get primaried, but I don't think it's going to be a big problem for him. So this is what, just like John Cornyn, I don't think he's sweating a lot about Collin County censuring him last year. But I wanted to mention, that again, this is something we could spend a couple of podcasts on, but the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, happened over the weekend, and it was a lively affair, as it always is. But Donald Trump had the big speech on Saturday, and this quote really stood out to me because it kind of gets to the heart of what we're talking about. He said, he was talking about before he decided to run for president in 2015. He said, we had a Republican Party that was ruled by freaks, neocons, globalists, open borders zealots, and fools. But we are never going back to the party of Paul Ryan, Karl Rove, and Jeb Bush. Now, I don't really get misty about Karl Rove. But I think the other guys that he mentioned, at least, were again also in that category of probably conservatives who tried to make policy, So it's a real clear line that he's drawn. And I think that if you look at the applause lines at CPAC, they're not really, I don't think that people, the things that traditionally Republicans cared about, which were, low taxes, cutting government spending, strong defense. It's really not that kind of stuff. It's all. I mean, the people were playing drinking games about every time the word woke is used, because it's just constant.
And I didn't see what his crowd looked like, but I know those were just on Twitter at whether it was a Son or Marjorie Taylor Greene that the crowds weren't there.
They weren't there.
And it's just again the amazing projection of Trump, calling folks freaks and fools, and it's just
open border zealots. Yeah, Republican Party. What was that? I missed that part.
Yeah. But I think it was funny also that over the same weekend you had Ron DeSantis meeting with the Club for Growth, which had been a supporter of Trump, has turned against it. This is like a high dollar. It was basically it was a mega donor fundraiser. And there was DeSantis. He's going to cash in on that money. And it used to be Trump's. Now it's not. I think clearly it's going to be a really raucous Republican primary in 2024. It's going to be pretty brutal.
It's going to be incredible.
Yeah. But the basic thing that Gonzales got attacked for, which is just that on occasion he will vote in bipartisan fashion, and that's the way it used to be. I mean, it was no big deal. It was, if Republicans sometimes voted along with Democrats on certain things and vice versa. So now it's just, one or two bills, a vote on one or two bills like that. This is what happens. So anyway, we're going to wrap things up there. Hope everyone's doing well. We'll be back with you next week. Take care.